sanctuary. What comes to mind when you think of that word? Perhaps this room that I am speaking from, a space this congregation chose to set apart for our weekly worship. Perhaps the safe spaces people have run to for shelter from violence and war. Maybe you think of the sanctuary movement, the collection of congregations who have chosen to house undocumented immigrants to provide them a safe place to stay while they work to avoid deportation. Perhaps you think of animal sanctuaries, places where rescued animals can live out their natural lives in security and peace. Maybe you picture that scene from The Hunchback of Notre Dame when Quasimodo yells, "Sanctuary, sanctuary," as he rushes Esmeralda to the cathedral to avoid execution. We have many associations with the word sanctuary, but all of them harken back to its roots in the Latin word sanctuarium, a safe place set apart for the holy, for the sacred. Hear that again, a safe place set apart for the holy, for the sacred. Now consider with me what this means in light of recent proposals to make McHenry County a gun sanctuary. If you haven't heard about this, here's a little background. Earlier this month, the Illinois legislature passed the Protect Illinois Communities Act. It's a bill that prohibits the manufacture and sale of assault weapons, high-capacity magazines, and switches. These are devices that can convert other types of weapons into more dangerous assault weapons. This bill was in response to the Highland Park shooting on July 4th, but also came as a result of many years of work by gun reform advocates. Since the passing of this new legislation, at least 90 Illinois county sheriffs, including our sheriff here in McHenry, have said that they will defy the law and allow these banned assault weapons in their community. One notable exception to this is Sheriff John Eidelberg of Lake County, where the Highland Park shooting occurred. Now, our county board is considering a proposal to make McHenry County a gun sanctuary, a county committed to protecting assault weapons and prohibiting enforcement of laws such as the Protect Illinois Communities Act. I'm sure we have a variety of views on and experiences with guns among our congregation gathered here and online today. But I will speak for myself here. Declaring our county a gun sanctuary is offensive to my religious values for a variety of reasons. But this morning, I'm going to focus on the one that is contained right there in the language, gun sanctuary. I refuse to declare that guns are holy, more sacred than the lives they put at risk. And yes, I know some people are switching to call for our country to be a Second Amendment sanctuary, not a gun sanctuary. But as much as I am passionate about the Constitution of our country, I don't believe that the Second Amendment or the NRA's incorrect interpretation of it is more sacred than people's lives either. Recognizing what is sacred, what is set apart and holy, is our specialty as people of faith. In his classic book on the nature of religion, The Sacred and the Profane, Mircea Eliade wrote, "It could be said that the history of religions, from the most primitive to the most highly developed, is constituted by a great number of hierophanies, manifestations of sacred realities." In other words, religion serves to bring out or recognize the sacred reality that exists all around us. He provides many examples. Certain places can become manifestations of sacred reality. Certain objects can become manifestations of sacred reality. Certain times and traditions become manifestations of sacred reality. And certain actions can become manifestations of sacred reality. What has the sacred reality of a place or a time or an object or an action, when has that become very important to you? Very apparent to you? I've been thinking about this week, and I'd like to share a few stories. When I was new to Unitarian Universalism, the minister of the fellowship in Topeka, Kansas, asked me to write and give the chalice lighting for our congregation. This was an important moment for me. I was new to Unitarian Universalism, but I recognized the chalice lighting as the moment when we entered into sacred space together. Our worship service became not just about getting people seated and sharing announcements. It became about creating sacred space as a community. And the shift to sacred space in my mind was marked by the lighting of the chalice. And to be the person who created the words and lit the chalice on Sunday morning, it mattered to me. Certain times and places can become manifestations of sacred reality. Another time that I was deeply aware of how we manifest the sacred was when I worked with Ecclesia Ministries. It's a homeless ministry connected to the Episcopal Cathedral in Boston. As a part of the ministry, people in the group wore these unique bronze crosses. And one time, one of the men in the group had been going through a lot, and he came to me and asked me to bless his cross. Now, this was before I was ordained, and I wasn't used to being asked for such things. But I recognized that he was inviting me to participate in shifting this cross from an everyday object into a sacred object for him. And as I joined him for this, I recognized that it wasn't really about me. I was present for this transformation of the object, but I wasn't doing it. The sacred was simply making itself known through that cross. Certain objects can become manifestations of sacred reality. As I was sharing these stories with Virginia earlier this week, she told me of an experience of her own and gave me permission to share it. Several years ago, Virginia was living in a new town and began attending a new Christian church there. And this was one of the churches that practiced a weekly Eucharist or communion. After attending a couple of times, Virginia was approached by one of the church leaders who asked if she would like to help serve communion that morning. She was a bit nervous, but agreed when the leader said, "You just follow me, do what I do." So when the time came for the communion ritual, Virginia saw the servers lining up at front, and she got in line. Each one walked up to take a plate of bread, but on their way forward, they paused and they touched a silver object, a vessel that was sitting on the altar table. Being new to this whole thing, Virginia wondered about this ritual. Was this holy water? Anointing oil? Clearly it was sacred. Each person paused reverently before the vessel, placing one hand above it and one hand on its side. So remembering what the church leader had said, Virginia decided she would do what they did. She paused before the vessel, placed one hand on the top and one hand on the side, and received the hand sanitizer. Yes, even before COVID, cleaning with hand sanitizer was an important practice in some churches. Certain everyday behaviors can become manifestations of sacred reality. Religious practices help us tune into sacred realities behind common things, everyday experiences. When we at Tree of Life come together on Sunday morning, both here in this building and online, we're recognizing this is sacred time. time set apart to point us to something greater than our normal experience of everyday time. When we sing our songs and engage in rituals such as the sharing of joys and sorrows, we are recognizing sacred behaviors, actions set apart to point us to something greater than our normal everyday experience of behaviors. When we light the chalice, or even when we share food in social hour, and what a spread today, we are recognizing sacred objects set apart to point us to something greater than our normal everyday experience of the material world. So yes, as people of faith, we are very good at recognizing the sacred on Sunday morning and hopefully throughout our week. So we must take it seriously when we hear our community and its leaders talking about what is sacred, what is worthy of sanctuary, a safe place set apart for the holy, for the sacred. Now, some may say, look, Reverend Jenn, the language of gun sanctuaries, it's rhetorical. It doesn't really mean we think guns are sacred. But there are many examples in our culture of treating violence as a sacred ritual. In this country, more than ever before. I was an intern in Napa when the Sandy Hook massacre happened, and it was my first time leading a Blue Christmas service scheduled for the Sunday after the shooting. I had to change everything about that service and also very little about it. Afterwards, so many politicians said that we must never allow something like this to happen again, and yet we never take the action necessary to stop it. And obviously, we know there's a way. We've done it before. When the U.S. banned assault weapons from 1994 to 2004, the number of deaths due to mass shootings fell. They began rising again when that ban expired. Other countries have, and localities have, found strategies for decreasing gun violence. It can be done. It usually involves looking at multiple factors that contribute to this problem of violence. But it almost always includes some level of regulating the manufacture, sale, and/or possession of weapons. Our culture, on the other hand, worships weapons as a source of salvation. We treat the Second Amendment as holy scripture, a sacred text, more sacred than human lives. We heavily arm law enforcement, despite evidence that this results in less safety for our communities, a sacred ritual of clothing our saviors with weaponry. We create and consume movies and TV shows sponsored by firearm companies to show their branded guns in the hands of heroes, sacred objects. Until very recently, we prevented the CDC from funding research on reducing gun violence as a means of preventing death. The mere mention of addressing gun violence in a grant application was treated as heresy. So when we hear people talk about gun sanctuaries, let's take them seriously, because that's exactly what is meant: sanctuary, a safe place set apart for the holy, for the sacred, for guns. When I was in college, I woke up one morning and my roommate told me this story. The night before, she had come back to our dorm while I was sleeping. I sat bolt right up in bed and told her America has no morals, laid back down and went back to sleep. Now, hearing this, I laughed. I had no memory of this, but I knew what had happened. I had spent much of the day before struggling to write a paper for one of my American history classes about the moral center of the United States. Apparently, I continued to struggle as I slept. And I'll be honest, my friends, sometimes I continue to struggle today. When the news brings me the murder of Tyre Nichols, yet another Black man who died at the hands of police, when there are so many mass shootings that they overlap one another and crowd each other out for headline space. My beloved spiritual companions, as people of faith, we are called to think deeply about our experience of the sacred. We engage in religious practices that attune us to what is holy, what is worthy of protection, of sanctuary. Our experience of the sacred within our lives as Unitarian Universalists should inform how we spend our time, our money, and our efforts, not just here in our physical sanctuary on Sunday mornings, but throughout the week and throughout our community. What does it mean for you to recognize and respond to the sacred? For me, it will mean being at the McHenry County Law and Government Committee meeting this Tuesday at 8:30 to oppose the effort to declare our community, our county, a gun sanctuary. If you'd like to join me, I'd love to see you there. But whatever you do this week, consider how it creates true sanctuary, a safe place set apart for the holy, for the sacred. Blessed be, dear ones.
Thank you, Rev. Jenn, for helping us think about how the sacred is related to our everyday lives. Each week, we take an offering that supports the work of this congregation in our lives, in our communities, and in our world. For those of you in the sanctuary today, please place your offering in the plates that will be passed. If you're new to Tree of Life, an offering is not expected. Your presence here is your gift to us. For those of you joining us online, you may make your offering in one of three ways, which are listed on your screen. You can text to give at 815-332-0643. You can give online. Links to those first two methods are in today's chat. Or you may send a check by mail to 5603 Bull Valley Road, McHenry, Illinois, 60050. We give thanks for these gifts and for all the gifts that you bring. Sharing our joys and concerns is a sacred moment in our worship when we open our hearts to receive and embrace each other's lives. If there's something new in your personal life that touches you, an event or situation of joy or challenge, we hope you feel invited to share this to help our community grow in connection. What you share will appear in the newsletter unless there is a request for it to be withheld. Please note this is not a time for announcements of upcoming events. First, for those online, if you have a joy or concern to share, please click on the raise hand icon, either in the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen, or for some people it will be at the bottom of the participants window. And then when I call on you, please unmute yourself. So looking for any raised hands online. And I am not seeing none at the moment. Give it one more minute, one more second. Okay, so let's go to the sanctuary. Anyone who would like to voice a joy or concern, please feel free to approach the microphone.
Hi. Oops. Hello. Hi, I'm Emmy Tanabe, and I am now, from last week, I've begun leading the Coming of Age program at our congregation, and I'm so very grateful and joyful to have this opportunity that our congregation makes this available to our youth, and that it is a way for us to grow in community through this program, leading youth to, as it says, coming of age, as they turn to adults, to become more enclosed and embraced by our faith.
Thanks, Emmy.
My name is Patrick Murfin, and I have a concern this week. My youngest grandson, who's 24, lives up in Waunakee, Wisconsin, had an extremely serious grand mal epileptic seizure this week, which is sent him to the hospital for 3 days. It's not only extremely devastating to his body, but it's also a serious emotional blow to him. His last two grand mal seizures both occurred about a year and a half apart when he was driving and resulted in accidents, one of which he was fairly seriously injured in. And he was just getting ready to, with a record of treatment, to be able to get his license back and be able to get to work and do things. And when this happens, he's been very heartbroken that all this has been taken away from him. So I hope you keep him in his mind, and I hope that his doctors can find a way to bring his epilepsy under control.
Thank you, Patrick. We'll be sure to keep your grandson in our thoughts and in our hearts. Anyone else this morning? I'll now place one more stone in the water to honor all of those unexpressed joys and concerns that remain in our hearts, and we'll consider those for 3 deep breaths. Amen.
Our centering meditation today is Choose to Bless the World by Rebecca Parker. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question: what will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will, a moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. There is an embrace of kindness that encompasses all lives, even yours. And while there is injustice or evil, there moves a holy disturbance, a benevolent rage, a revolutionary love, protesting, urging, insisting that that which is sacred will not be defiled. Those who bless the world live their life as a gesture of thanks for this beauty and this rage. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith. The life of ritual and praise, the comfort of human friendship, the company of earth, the chorus of life welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility waiting. Blessed be.